So you are just hitting max level in Guild Wars 2, and you have lots of pop-ups and other things thrown at you, but you have no idea where to go and what you should do first. Should you get gear? Should you get some mounts? What the heck should I do? Well, that's where I'm going to help you out. These are the things that I recommend you doing first when you hit max level in Guild Wars 2. Now, this is purely my opinion based off of my experience here in this game, and it shouldn't be taken as law. The game is great because you can do literally whatever you want, and it is all valid and worthwhile, so keep that in mind. In this example, I am basing it off of you having all of the expansions and DLC. I'm also not focusing on the story elements through this, so if you have any inclination of playing through the story in chronological order, then I'd recommend you do the first 2 steps and then focus on the story. As for the most part, you will passively unlock most of these anyway. Let's get into it. Now, the very first thing that I recommend you do when you hit max level is to find a good all-purpose build. But how do you do this? What works? What doesn't? Who knows? Well, luckily, there are plenty of tested builds that you can research for. Now, since we are hitting level 80 for the first time, we are specifically going to look for core open world builds, as we don't have any hero points to unlock the elite specializations quite yet. But that, of course, is on this list. We choose open world builds as they tend to be self-sufficient and have defensives as well as some self-healing for your survival. When we look at these builds, we are going to be looking to choose one that is typically oriented around power. This is for 2 reasons. Power builds tend to be very straightforward. Attack, fight, and win. You don't need to be worrying about conditions or debuff uptime. Simply attack and you're good to go. The second comes when we are purchasing gear, which I'll cover here in a minute. I've included in the description all the websites where you can find quality open world builds and which ones I'd recommend. Just know that these are baseline builds, and as you get more experience and feel for your character, you can definitely change them to whatever you think is more effective and more your playstyle. Once we have our build set up, now we need to outfit it with some gear. But what is the best gear to get? How can I do it quickly? Well, that's where we're going to visit our friend the Trading Post. There are specific named exotic gear that we can purchase for very cheap, only a few pieces of gold for an entire set. Now, there's quite a few choices that we can make, but typically we can get a whole set of, say, for example, Berserker stats, which is oriented around strike damage or power builds, for exceedingly cheap. Now, there are a few options of defensive stat gear that offer other combinations of power with toughness or vitality if you are finding it a little bit more difficult to stay alive, so these might be a better option for you. But be warned, that toughness stat is essentially the aggro stat. Most enemies function by attacking the target with the most toughness, so keep that in mind. Exotic gear is great because at a minimum, it is all you really need. It gets you the required stats that are only a little bit behind Ascended and Legendary items, which have the best stats, and we can purchase these named gear pieces right from the Trading Post for typically less than a gold piece per item. I've included in the description a link to the named gear that you can pick up which armor you want to get. Remember, we are oriented around power, so typically look for either power, precision, or ferocity as stats. As for your rings, amulets, and other various things that you may not have filled out during the story mission, I recommend going and talking to this laurel vendor. Now, laurels are a currency that are primarily earned through the Wizard's Vault, which is our daily reward. By earning the laurels by completing dailies and spending your astral acclaim on them, you can purchase ascended trinkets, amulets, and rings from any laurel merchant in any major city, as well as a various amount of other places. And again, try to keep it in line that we are looking for like power-oriented builds. Okay, so we have a build and some gear. What next? Now we need to focus on some account unlocks. As mentioned, this guide doesn't focus on the story. If you do care about the story, then you are set up right now to tackle anything thrown your way. So good luck and Godspeed. For those of you who don't really care about the story, we are targeting mounts first. And in my mind, there are 2 ways to approach this task. The traditional route would be by doing the Path of Fire zones for the 4 main mounts that include the Raptor, the Springer, the Jackal, and the Skimmer. These 4 mounts in conjunction would be able to handle any form of terrain thrown your way. The Springer, you will need to progress the Raptor mount's mastery first to at least canyon jumping mastery. to cross the canyon where you go to complete a renowned heart to purchase the Springer. Technically, the Raptor and the Springer can be unlocked from the end of Dragon's Zone New Canang City. However, these do not come with their respective masteries and as such will only be the base mount. The Raptor is also automatically unlocked for new accounts who own an expansion at level 10, but the masteries won't be able to train until that character is at max level. The Springer is located at the High Jump Ranch in the Desert Highlands and is available after finishing the Renowned Heart plus the cost of 50 trade contracts and 1 piece of gold. The Skimmer is unlocked at the Renowned Heart at Skimmer Ranch in Elon Riverlands at the cost of 50 trade contracts and 4 gold. And lastly, the Jackal is in the Desolation at the Dijin Enclave at the cost of 30 gold and 200 trade contracts if you do the Renowned Heart that day, or 40 gold and 200 trade contracts if you did not. To access this one, you will need at least the High Volt Mastery for the Springer or the Ride the Wind Mastery for the Skimmer. However, even at this point, I would say if you have the Skimmer, the Raptor, and the Springer, the Jackal is just nice to have, honestly. You could skip this one if you don't need it. Again, these 4 mounts will cover most of what you need, but there may be an alternative. In the latest expansion of Secrets of the Obscure, they made a major push for players to earn their Sky Scale faster. In fact, the Sky Scale is a very important part of the expansion. The Sky Scale is one of 2 flying mounts in game and is arguably the most versatile. Not throwing any shade to the Griffin, just saying. Instead of working on the 4 basic mounts, you could technically work on the Sky Scale mount for completion within the Secrets of the Obscure zone. You will need to complete various tasks in a shorter version than the alternative, which is the Living World Season 4 collection. While you are in the Secrets of the Obscure zones, however, you will be able to progress your Sky Scale Mastery while also flying one. This is typically like a rental. You do not get to fly it in other zones other than the Secrets of the Obscure areas. However, while you were here, you do get to fly a rental one until you unlock it fully. Now, be warned, this can take some time, and there is a bit of RNG elements to it, along with a mild collection, but once you have completed the Sky Scale, essentially you'll never need another mount again, technically. My personal recommendation is to focus on the Path of Fire mounts first, and then build up to the Sky Scale, as most of the original 3 mounts can be completed in less than a day, depending on how much time and gold you have at the ready, so keep that in mind. Okay, so we have the build, gear, mounts, and some masteries. What next? Well, my opinion, the next biggest thing that you should unlock is your gliding. Now, gliding is a feature from the Heart of Thorns expansion, and it essentially allows you to slow fall from any point with just a push of the button. Now, this is a key feature in the Heart of Thorns maps because most of the maps are vertical, and they have updrafts, and I believe this is such a great add-in, honestly, because it can save you a lot. The glider works as an endurance bar. That is, when active, it slowly drains, and then once depleted, you will free fall until some of the endurance is ready to use again. You can jump from a very high place and at the very last second open your glider and take no fall damage whatsoever. This is such an amazing thing to unlock because I promise you, you will accidentally roll off of a cliff and fall to your near death only to be saved by popping out your wings at the last second. Now, I recommend your training of this particular mastery for gliding at least until lean techniques, which will increase your flight endurance pool, but will also add additional mobility when you are gliding. You can technically unlock this feature as well in the End of Dragons expansion. However, much like the Springer Mastery, you won't be able to progress any of the gliding masteries unless you work on the Heart of Thorns pathway. Okay, so now that we have a bunch of unlocks of the open world, now it is time for us to further our character's capabilities and earn some elite specialization. In Heart of Thorns, Path of Fire, and End of Dragons, there are specific specializations that can extend your power of your character. Each spec for a full unlock costs 250 hero points. Now, if you try to get those hero points in Corteria, this is going to take you forever, as they only ever give 1 point per node. To unlock this reasonably, we need to go into the expansion zones, where each hero point node grants 10 points total. Now, the easiest hero point zones are going to be in the Path of Fire expansion, as these typically only have veteran level mobs that hit moderately hard and can be almost always soloed fairly easily. Then the End of Dragon zones, which features an elite mob that hits a bit harder and has a few mechanics to deal with, but can of course still be soloed. Then we have the Heart of Thorns hero point nodes. These are significantly tougher as they are a champion level mob and have multiple powerful hitting effects. For all 3 of these expansions, I recommend you keep an eye out for hero point trains in each of the zones or in the looking for group tab. This is usually a large contingent of players going node to node, defeating the hero point challenges fairly easily, granting everyone credit. If not, ask in the map chat for assistance with a specific hero point node, and usually you can get a couple of people to come and help. I should also note, for those who would rather PvP to get their elite specs, you can earn hero points by participating in world versus world. Periodically, you can earn skirmish chests, and one of the items inside this chest is Testimony of Jade Heroics. This can be consumed to earn 6 hero points to be able to be spent on notarized scrolls that automatically credit your account with expansion hero points at random. However, it is far more effective to just earn the hero points at their nodes and earn the elite specializations that way. It also tends to be quite fast. I'd also like to mention that even if you were earning hero points in the Path of Fire expansion and you were spending those hero points on an End of Dragons elite specialization, you can absolutely do so. Once you have the hero points, they are yours to spend how you feel is correct. So keep that in mind. Okay, so those are the major things that I'd say focus on first, but there are some auxiliary things that will greatly improve your experience in the game, and these are the ones that I think are the most important. One thing that is important to note about Guild Wars 2 is that the amount of items you get is insane. I mean, you get a lot of items in your travel. So the quality of life feature that I'd recommend here is getting some decent sized bags. Now, the bigger bag slots typically are more expensive or more difficult to get, so there are some ways to get around this. First, and most notably, is in Living World Season 1. By completing each of the story elements, each individual chapter all the way through, you will be rewarded with a 20-slot bag. That means that you can get 5 20-slot bags just by playing through the story. That is a ton of storage. Not only do you get a dose of storytelling, but this is a great way to get bags for basically free. Now, another way you can do this is by going to the Siege Master, which costs some gold and 75 badges of honor each, which is one of the main currencies from the World vs. World game mode. Now, if you were getting your hero points through World vs. World, this is an excellent way to knock out 2 birds with 1 stone. But if PvP doesn't cut it, you can always just get a 24-slot bag just by signing up for the newsletter from ArenaNet. This is essentially free, and occasionally they'll have a sale or 2 that they send your way, but all intents and purposes, it's very simple. You can, of course, purchase some from the trading post or craft them on your own, but I think they are a bit expensive for my taste. Regardless of how you do it, get some bags, save a headache. The next point is going to be about your Criteria Mastery, and specifically we are looking for the Advanced Logistics Mastery under the Pact Commander tab. This mastery allows you to automatically loot nearby items from enemies without physically having to go over and pick them up. This will save you a headache and overall annoyance, and is probably one of the biggest convenience factors in this game, honestly. I will admit that I do not have this mastery because I have run a bit dry on the Criteria Mastery points, as I've spent quite a bit of them on the Fractal Masteries as well as the Legendary Item Masteries. But it's something that I recommend, and it's a big regret that I didn't do in the first place. Do this, you'll just automatically pick up items as you run by. Pretty neat. Lastly, I would like to mention one of the most obvious things in this game, but still worth mentioning, is finding a guild. There are tons and tons of things that you can do in this game, and lots of different ways to grow. Having a guild to assist you when you need it, or to find new friends to play with, is something that will vastly improve your experience in this game. Not to mention that most guilds have a guild hall that offer either free flask boosts for karma, experience, as well as farming nodes for materials that you can get into daily. Case in point, the game is Guild Wars 2, so why not join a guild and make a friend? If you watch this and Guild Wars 2 is piquing your interest, click this video here to discover 4 critical habits that will vastly improve your experience in the game. As always, stay caffeinated, folks.